My name is Shiva Viswanathan, and I've been practicing designer for the past 3 decades and a little bit more. I'm a visiting faculty at DJAD, while I'm a practitioner, a director of Design Up, which is a community and a conference. I also run a talent intelligence AI platform called MayaMaya.ai. That's broadly about me, but we are not here to talk about me today. I am excited to welcome you to the series of webinars. We have had a few. We started with Vaidyanathan, who was the dean, then went to Niels, then Sarita Sundar. Then we spoke to a bunch of students who are interning, which was fun. That was last week. And now we have Michael Foley. This is a part of the webinars about design education at DJAD. DJAD is the first private design college in South India, incubated by NID in 2004, and it's located in Coimbatore. Incidentally, Michael and I were at NID at some point in time. Before we start, there are a few things that you need to understand. One is drop your questions in the Q&A section, which is right down there. And then when we get time, I'll probably ask these questions. So today we have structured it slightly differently. Michael is going to actually present a lot of his work to start with, and I'll follow it up by asking a few questions. So before inviting Michael over, I just want to quickly say that Michael belongs to a generation of Indian designers who helped shape modern industrial design as we know today, not just through products, but by building one of the earliest multidisciplinary design studios that connected the idea of product, brand experience, strategy into probably one single design conversation. So over to you, my quick introduction, and we can actually start off with your presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Shiva. Thanks. Hi, everyone. So I think just a quick intro, and then I'll walk you through some of the work that I've done. I've had broadly two careers, one which is in the corporate space, where I worked with Titan for about 13 years, building their design studio. And then, of course, after that, starting off Foley Designs. And I think what I've done here is kind of given a little bit of a sense of a journey of work, not really showcasing what is recent, but just to kind of give you a sense of how I did work through when I started as a student to now. So it kind of gives you a sense of a journey and a landscape of how design has also evolved. So I run a studio called Foley Designs, and we're about 45 people, multidisciplinary. I think we reflect the whole perspective that projects and briefs are very, very mixed in terms of requirement. Of not very, very distinctly product design or communication, etc. It's normally a mix of things, and that's how we've kind of structured the studio. And we've expanded that to electronics and prototyping. So we are able to now take an idea and then build a prototype or a proof of concept. So that's how we've structured the studio. So what I'll do is walk you through work. I'm going to just go through a journey of work. So it's just from right at the beginning and just scan through things. I'm not going to hold on pages too long. And let me just share screen first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, so just a quick thing. I think it's important as aspiring designers or students who are looking at getting into the space of design to kind of maybe reach back into what you were interested in the past. And I, for one, was interested in two things. I used to build things out of scrap, and then of course I was very keen on painting. So I was sure I was not going to be an artist, but I didn't know at that point of time what this mixed skills would end up doing. So I kind of navigated to wanting to become an architect, and then from there, in fact, at that point of time, there was very little communication about design institutes, and my father actually happened to find a little ad on NID, and I applied there, and it just seemed to be a sweet spot of things that I liked, and it kind of started my journey. So I did 5 years in NID, and then of course I was one of the things that an interesting thing that happened at NID is that after my foundation, which was the first year, I was a bit confused in terms of what area of discipline of design that I'd want to join. So I'd actually joined communication design, and then because I was interested in the visual bit of it, and I was also interested in building things, so I was very confused. So I kind of took the advice of faculty at that point of time and realized that product design, industrial design was the area that I really wanted to fit in. So, I mean, that one of the things that I'm reflecting here is this whole first project that I did at Titan, which is when I was an intern there, and I interned to design a line of Titan's first introduction of Indian watches from a brand called Timex, and I built a line in steel. Then I kind of used this whole idea of typography and watch design. That kind of started giving me this whole insight of how interconnected disciplines are. And I think this whole idea of typography and watch design really took me into a lot of understanding of proportions, playing typography, because dials are largely two-dimensional in that sense, and of course form of the watch. So it kind of was a very interesting area that almost melded design disciplines together. I actually started using my illustration or painting skills to actually make presentations to the team. So I would actually hand paint these, cut these holes in the dials, and actually present these as painted design options. So at that point, we had no training on computers, so we actually relied a lot on just skill of putting things together. So the big difference, if you reflect from what I did then and what you do today, is this whole idea that you need to really, distill down things before you present it. But today, the whole, systems of software allow you to iterate a lot more. So that's the big difference. But I found this quite interesting because it kind of got me into a lot of interesting, journeys in Titan. So, funnily, the first project I did at Titan was a visual communication or graphic design job. I designed the Tanishq word mark and symbol. Mr. Desai, who was the CEO at that point of time, kind of didn't really see the differentiations in verticals at that point. If you're a designer, you should be able to do a wider span. And I got to work with him, and this is the first thing that I got to do before watches. So after my internship project, I ended up doing this. And then after that, of course, it was back to watches. I kind of built a whole range of ideas, and then I was very keen on objects. So I kind of got Tanishq to push into going beyond jewelry. So we designed a line of silverware. We used to prototype these out of paper, wax, etc., and then kind of work with the craftsmen to kind of build these up. And of course, the whole journey of watch design kind of got me into 13 years of building interesting brands for them. Started looking at how consumers see timepieces. And interesting thing is, this whole bit of a watch sits on, say, 2 square inches on your wrist, and that's everything that you know about design kind of sits in that. So it's a nice, almost like a zoomed in fragment of a product that's on a person. And I found that whole idea of attention to detail coming from that. And I've started, of course, looking at that across the other things that I did. I started getting involved a lot in the wider perspective of design, which is not just the aesthetics, but becoming part of co-creation teams within the group. And I was part of a team that took about 4 years to design Edge. We actually did about 40 different products, and then worked across manufacturing, R&D, and production to be able to test every idea. And nothing was just about sketches. It was about creating the first sketch or first form. And then, of course, a lot of it was working with the factory to see what was feasible. So I kind of got used to understanding how things were made while building my insights on design and aesthetics for watches. And of course, I continue to do that with Titan. Even today, we work with them on several areas of product design and beyond that. So I think I've kind of broken this presentation to a little bits of insights that you can get from work that I've done across after Titan as well. So I think the one thing about I started enjoying materials a lot. So I used to experiment a lot. This is while I was at Titan, and they allowed us to experiment, explore, as long as it was not in conflict with the categories that Titan had. So I had started working with a lot of vendors to explore products, and as expressions of of lifestyle in that sense. So I took this whole theme of water and built a series of objects of desire in some sense. So I was taking simple objects, transforming the functionality into very sculptural elements. So a handle isn't a handle; it's like a little splash of steel that comes through the center. So I took them as expressions as objects, and not really entirely about just pure functionality. Everything was functional, but I mean, I just believe that objects need to speak more than just functionality. And that kind of got me into a lot of ideas of innovations. This was a martini glass that I designed for Bombay Sapphire, where I was saying, how do you reinvent something that exists and has been done so many times over in the past? So I took this whole idea that look at the usability of a martini glass, and then when you lift it up is when it's actually useful, not when it's placed down. When you place it down, it's actually most wine glasses and martini glasses have a base. But we designed, I designed this as a form that has counterweighted legs. So the moment you lift it up in your hand, it kind of collapses into a small, single assembly of legs that just don't have a base. And the moment it touches the surface, it kind of, just stands on its own. So I got very keen on the whole idea of innovations and not just aesthetics. And so I started building ideas that I could possibly look at, maybe awards or anything that kind of gave me an opportunity to express things to people. And this was a mass customization bicycle that I designed and the whole thing was I reflected this whole idea of how computers were assembled in the past. You could actually assemble things based on memory, systems, etc. And I said, why can't we design bicycles in the same way? You snap fit everything, and you come into a store and assemble your bicycle and cycle out in some sense. So it opened up reinventing objects in an interesting manner. The other area that I found very interesting with products is this whole idea of symbolism. I think I picked one project here, which is the whole Commonwealth Games baton. We had won the bid to design the baton for the games that happened in 2010. And again, symbolism was something that they'd asked us, do something that represents India. And we, given India's historic past, we didn't find a singular symbol that kind of bound all of India. So we kind of took the symbolic route, and we said, I had a little bit of a journey I used to, drive from Hosur to Bangalore when I was with Titan, and then when the Electronic City flyover was being built, and post that, when we were, one of our projects in Hosur, I drove back and we picked soil from 5 different areas of where they were building this flyover. And we found 5 different colors of soil, natural colors. And we said, soil might be a great idea to symbolize India. So I picked we built this craft out of soil. And we picked soil then finally from every state of India. And as a studio at that point in time, we were, I think, about 15 people. And we had to collaborate. So I think this whole concept of collaboration came alive as well. We got the Indian Army to work with us. They got the soil picked up from Leh, Ladakh, Andamans, every corner of India, every state, and got it to us within a month's time. And then we worked with Carborundum India, outskirts of Chennai, and we kind of took over the lab and then experimented with how soil can be impregnated onto a textile. We worked with Titan to CNC mill the aluminum parts. So it became a very interesting collaborative product design exercise where we were almost like the choreographers of this whole idea, and we worked with partners to get the best of their expertise in this. Just an interesting fact, this little leaf was, I got Tanish to get them to make it, and we had these fine words of the Queen inscribed on it. There were about 300 words inscribed, so it was miniaturized. So we then looked at security hologram manufacturers. We in fact also reached out to a rice grain miniature artist as well, but we finally went with a technology that allowed us to inscribe the leaf with a complete message. We also then looked at, India has always seen from a past perspective, and we wanted the baton really not to, define the past, it had to define a future in some way. So we kind of looked at technology, and I was always very keen in, using technology in products. And this is the first time this was done as well, where we had a GPS module that allowed the baton to change the flag colors as it went onto the relay across the world. So the flag colors would change from India to South Africa to Australia, etc., based on the GPS coordinates of the baton. So it became an interesting technology edge, that defined a future India in some sense. So we wanted to really bring a new age, forward-looking India as a symbol in the baton. that really took us into a range of a journey into making a lot of trophies, because I think baton in some sense is a symbol of sport, and we kind of got to we were fortunate to work with Formula One the 2 years that they were in India. We designed and produced their cups. We actually took again this whole idea of the chakra and then abstracted that into interesting forms that represented India, but also the sport. So we took the processions in the past of a victory procession, because I think Formula One's about sport and entertainment. So we wanted to look at a symbol that kind of bound the two together. And of course, for me, it was this whole idea of craftsmanship. So we built these not out of silver, but more out of aluminium. And aluminium was commonly used in the automotive industry as well, and therefore the connect. That kind of got me into looking at building stories. I think stories is something that bound sculpture, product, and the journey of stories that we wanted to speak about. So we built this whole. We designed a bell that we wanted to create as a vehicle of telling stories. So it was a bell that was one very clean, almost like a drop form, and we then took crafts of India and started speaking stories on these. So it's more like a collectible idea. So these were again in the space of symbolism, and that took us to another journey, which is you as a designer, you can design a lot of things, but I think we've got such a rich craft history and legacy in India. We wanted to kind of build a range of things where we collaborate with craftsmen and partially make the craftsmen work with us, and then build new age functional objects with that whole idea. We brought back interesting technology concepts of electroforming of silver, enamel filling, soil impregnation, etc., to build a lot of these crafted objects. And of course, that took us to then very closely working with artisans to kind of look at how objects could be created. And again, functionality was always the central part of it, but it was about creating an expression and functionality at the same time, and therefore a lot more challenging in terms of expressing product design. Most clients today ask us for ownable ideas. So we work with Jacqua. We've done, I think, close to about 40-50 products for them. They have very open briefs. They ask us to come up with a thought. I mean, a faucet is a faucet, so they ask us to come up with things that make using their products memorable. So that's the starting point for a design team here. And so we start exploring how do you create memorable experiences with products. So here's a faucet that we said visually should be able to tell you whether it's open, close, on, off, and define an action for control. So for example, when you swing this faucet out, it kind of moves from cool water to warm water, and then you swing it back and it shuts together. So it kind of became sculptural, became functional, and also a strong identity for them. That we expanded into a complete design language for them across a range of products. So it went on to about 7-8 different things that complete a line. And that whole idea of a design language then became an important part, because every product has to speak a similar language when it's part of one line. Just reflecting on a very simple object, I think Natal was something that was not redesigned in 60 years, I think, the time when we had approached them. And we said, let's kind of pitch an idea to them, because they were in a branding exercise at that point of time. And we said, let's let the product be a strong engagement from a brand perspective. So we designed a loop that was the new interpretation of a security or a complete circle. And we also innovated on the way the key was manufactured, so that it helped keep this key from being copied too fast. So it was an asymmetric keyhole. It eliminated this whole fumbling that you have with keys when there's a ferrule in it. And it became an expression in itself in terms of a product. Another one that I wanted to bring up is, soaps are a very odd kind of space. It's sculpture, it's product design, it's visual identity, all in one, because very often brands see the shape of soap as the brand identity as well. It's not just the branding on it. So we took a dewdrop for Fiyama, and that's one thing that we built up. So they gave us chunks of soap, and we actually sculpted these out as forms, and they wanted something that could define freshness. So we looked at how we could kind of look at this transparent, translucent form that could be ornament. It was a little dewdrop form, and this still exists. This is, I think, something we did about, I think, close to 15 years back. Yeah, so I think clients bring a lot of this essence that they want to reinvent themselves, and we are constantly given problems that are not very, not structured as a brief, but very open, in the sense they want something fresh from design studios today. They want them to think beyond, just adhering to a specific brief. So we've done a whole range of products in the water space where we were asked, while devices were all blue and white, they asked us to look at how we can reinvent that space. So we, I think, were the first brand to bring this whole idea of minimalist black glass-like forms into water, because water was always associated to white and blue purity, etc. So we took this whole thing of how the other categories are evolving and kind of started applying those sensibilities. The mobile phones use a lot of glass. There was a lot of glass being used in kitchen accessories, etc., coffee machines. And we said, I mean, that's a good space to kind of reinvent a category that has not too much involvement, because you don't, access water that frequently. But it started opening up very interesting innovations that went beyond just the shape and form, but also, the whole idea of being able to capture purity. And we created this shaft of blue light that comes through the water. So we had to mechanically also come up with a way to do it. So the moment you access water, it actually looks like blue light lit up water. Now a lot of brands are doing that at this point. Of course, it kind of opened up a lot of interesting innovations from an interaction perspective, and not just the device, because the device again is limited to a certain extent by the amount of things that go into it for filtration, etc. So you have to be able to play with constraints, but still come out with things that are innovative. I think it's not just about shape and form, but it's about process. How do you kind of rethink things with existing constraints? Moving on to how one idea leads to another. I think as designers, we have we work with clients on a few things, but through conversations that actually evolves to a lot more. In fact, our engagement with Himalaya started with coming up with a calendar idea. So the CEO at that point had asked us to look at how you could create a calendar that spoke about science and herbs together. So we explored X-ray imageries as a great way to kind of talk about science, and that process then colored, created this whole expression for Himalaya, which continued for many years and expanded into product design for us, which is we were then kind of building up a visual identity, as well as how do we create these visual signatures that start connecting with consumers. So even if there was no label, you should be able to say this is a Himalaya product. So that's visual symbols that through product design that need to come alive. So we kind of work with them across a whole range of products. And this is a very odd exercise. We used to design a lot of bottles and labels for United Spirits, and this is like a lucky intervention. At one point of time, I think Vijay wanted to start a team from Bangalore, and we were well versed with the brand elements of Royal Challenge as a brand, and then we were just the second year, I think, is when they asked us to kind of just give it a shot and see if you can quickly come up with something. So we had to literally design this overnight, and that journey started off 18 years back, and we've been designing the jerseys for them ever since, and looking at the entire identity, how it evolves. I think the whole idea of what a fan connects with the team through design is what we were looking at, and of course that expanded into a whole range of identities that they kind of started using to look at reaching out to fans. So we controlled that in terms of design and visual identity, as well as products that we did for them. Another interesting idea of where this whole marriage of identity and product design comes together, we helped Java and Yazdi with their last mile design right across their bikes. From how do you carry an essence of a brand into the product and bring those experiences alive for a rider? So we designed all the last mile experiences, which is the tachymeter, the elements that cover the horn, the fuel cap, the badge, etc. So all of that was kind of things that kind of brought together one experience for a rider, and that, you know, the whole thing was to kind of look at how we can reinvent the classic for today's consumers. So we help them with colors, decals, branding elements, and you know. So again, like here, it's a little bit of a fluid thing. It's not identity, it's not product design. It's a mix of things, and I think that kind of got us into a range of projects in the space of identity and design. And I think, like I said earlier, I think the whole idea of technology has been very, very close to me, and I've always been interested in partnering with firms that have some interesting technology, and then we can kind of build products with them. So we've, over the years, worked with several startups to work on miniaturized technologies, which is a ring versus communication devices, etc. And here's one example of one of the startups that we worked with, where he came with a technology that ex-Harman Kardon person, and he wanted to, so we collaborated, co-created a speaker. Again, this is an old product. Speakers can be miniaturized a lot more, but we came up with an interesting idea. It was for audiophile, not for audiophiles, in the sense you can buy a surround sound and place these speakers anywhere you like, but it'll kind of give you a good sweet spot of sound. So we designed these to take power from bulb sockets, and you could replace a bulb with a speaker, and then it gave you great sound. And of course, that got us to redefine speakers as a product, as shape and form. We started looking at spinning of aluminium and steel instead of injection molding plastics. So it opened up redefining the speaker itself. Here's an interesting idea that we have, again, another tech firm that we work with, where we have this whole concept of how a typical faceless QR can be reconfigured into an image-based QR. So we have worked on several ideas here, and we built this up. This is live actually now, and it kind of gives QRs an interesting layer by reconfiguring pixels. It has allowed us to create something which we patented now, where you can actually now build QRs that take you to multiple destinations based on the time you click it. So that opens up a completely new space, and it gives us this whole idea that we can actually then create objects that do a lot more. This is a QR clock that we're building, and it basically shows you time, and every minute it allows you to takes you to different content completely. So it's basically pushing the boundaries on what you actually have, and then kind of use design and partner with tech firms, and then see how we can kind of come up with completely new ideas. And of course, I think one of the big parts of design leading to good design is process innovation. I think most projects end up with some amount of an understanding of processes, and then how do you innovate further. This is a little project that we did for a dial company, and they had this whole concept of extremely fine, intricate miniaturization of features, because dials are so small. And they asked us to come up with the concept and build this. And we kind of looked at this whole bird's eye view of the planet. And we took cityscapes, we took farmlands, and we built these very interesting stories on dials. And that became the method and vehicle for the company to kind of promote this with their Swiss customers. And very interesting exercise, because we started learning about miniaturization and then how design can play a role with that. So we did a whole series, and we work with them every year on various lines. That we found can bring new ideas is aircraft itself. So we looked at chandeliers and said chandeliers are all wired up, and you can't do much with them. So we said, can we create a modular system? And then if you want to do something modular with chandeliers, you have to literally take the wires out. So we said a great analogy is wire inlay that you see in typical crafts that you see in India. So we then inlaid steel onto the wood shafts, and that steel then carried the power to the lights. So we had modular elements that we could either assemble into a radial form or a linear form, and opened up a completely new space in chandeliers itself that combines new technologies. And of course, it kind of became an expression. So you're exposing the product itself. So there's nothing inside the chandelier. Everything that you see is outside. So it's opened up interesting things. I think the other area of innovation that you can get a lot is process innovation with materials itself. So areca nut, typically used for plates, throwaway plates. We said, can we look at this for hospitality, where you have footwear that's placed for you, and you spend probably a day in a hotel, and then you throw things out. So can that be designed in a very interesting manner? So we formed these leaves into simple footwear that you wear inside a room, and easy to dispose and degrade. Sometimes limitations in processes also open up a lot of innovation. I think this is again a project that we did many years back. It still exists, where the Tatas had asked us to look at a bottle weight constraint. So we were asked to reduce the weight of a bottle and then produce a design that worked. So it was all about finding structural strength in a bottle. And so we took this whole idea of pouring water. Water has this interesting resonance of flow. And we took that shape and then built these ribs that kind of created this almost like this frozen water feel. And this is a bottle designed that created then an expression out of the functional features on the bottle. Of course, I mean, coming towards the end of it, I mean, we've always been keen on looking at things differently. I think, how do you reinvent objects? So it's aesthetics is maybe a layer, but objects itself are primary to us in terms of how do you kind of get new functionality built in. So this is an idli tray. I think idli trays have never been stackable. I think I'm surprised that that was never done. So this is around COVID. We said, given business was coming down, we said, let's come up with some product ideas. So we patented a simple idea that allowed you to clip trays, and it builds up to whatever size of steamer you have at home. And it kind of became quite an interesting reinvention of a common object. And this has kind of taken us into a journey of looking at rethinking a lot of our kitchen products. I think one of the interesting things about India is that every 50 kilometers your food habits change, and I think that's a space that we have been quite excited to build up as a line. The other space that we've now looked at, innovating and filing patents and building a product, so in the hope that we can take them out, as public spaces, pavements. If you walk down streets in Bangalore, etc., pavements are literally non-existent. So we've tried to design solutions that could work. This is a counterweighted seat. It always stays up, so it takes only a 6-inch footprint when no one's using it, and then counterweights itself up. So then we said, since it's being moved up and down, you can actually harness energy out of it. And now we're building this to look at how we can prototype this into the next level, where we can constantly harness energy through public movement. And of course, possibly build it into a larger system. So these are areas that we are now looking at slowly getting into, to see how we can kind of pitch proactively, think new things from a design perspective, given that we've been there for so long. Just ending with something that again expresses literally what we most are fond of, which is this whole idea of being able to create expressions with functionality almost merged together, so you don't really see. So functionality becomes desire in some sense, and so this is a jewelry piece that, depending on the orientation of your hand, kind of gives you different shapes and forms based on how it's constructed. So that's the last one. I just wanted to end with that. So I just hope I give you a good sense of what what we do and how we have navigated this whole space so far.
That was absolutely fabulous, Mike. I think you gave a pretty good view of not only what you do and what are the possibilities for product design and industrial design today, and how there's no boundaries between disciplines largely. Actually, I have one question on that boundaries between disciplines. Especially now, more and more merging. What would you tell a young designer about a specialization versus a multidisciplinary practice?
Yeah, so I think for me, while projects and problems are always going to be multi-disciplinary in terms of problem solving, it's important to have one specialization as your backbone in some way. And I think that will never go. I think you need to start somewhere. You need to be strong at one. And I think the whole thing that I keep promoting is arm's reach understanding of other disciplines. So if you are a product designer, you should have an arm's reach understanding of visual communication, materials and processes, spatial experience, etc. You don't have to be an expert in them, because that kind of gives you this whole leverage to collaborate better. And that's the future. I think there's going to be a lot more collaboration. So it's multidisciplinary, but you need to have one core, asset that brings that you can bring to the table of collaboration in some sense.
So given that, and what do you think are like the timeless skills that young product and communication designers, actually more of product designers, should master deeply?
I think I believe you firmly need to be able to express through sketching. I mean, it's not about great art, but it's about being able to communicate. I know there exists a lot of software today that enhances things that you want to say and express. I mean, prompt-based generative AI, etc. But I think the one skill that designers must have is being able to clearly articulate things through their own scribbles and sketches and schematics, because I think critical thinking is going to be the future for a designer. Skills will get not really replaced, but enhanced a lot by what exists in terms of software and tools. But your one basic skill of being able to draw and explain is something that I think should not go, and we need to really get that skill back. If it's, I feel sometimes that's also not pushed a lot at schools, but that's something that we should definitely bring back.
So do you think even young graduates kind of underestimate that, the power of doing that? Do you see that when you hire?
I do. I mean, I think that's something. So typically, we really don't worry about which school you come from, but how you learn and how you adapt to an environment. And I think from a designer standpoint, being able to, I think the attitude is a combination of being able to be open to collaborate, being able to be open to have somebody else, critique your idea, and be able to communicate at the same level, whether you're a junior or senior, doesn't matter. But I think that tool helps you communicate better. So if you're able to scribble an idea, clarify thoughts through some method visually, I think that's something that I keep pushing for, because that's really important. I mean, for me, it's not as important to 3D model something early off, but clarify things, on paper as much as possible. And not just on paper, I think it's basic mock-ups, small paper mock-ups, etc. Anything that is simple to articulate, clarify your thoughts, and then go into a software that you can finally detail things out with.
Yeah, I'm going to ask my last one, but the Q&A stuff is open. I think there are lots of industrial design students and industrial designers who are logged in. You guys can throw your questions in the Q&A. I'll ask it on behalf of you. But let me ask my final question. When you look at the next decade of Indian design, especially in the, in this mixed bag of stuff and borderless method of working multidisciplinary, I would want to know what excites you the most and what worries you the most.
I think the one part that worries me the most is generalization that has gone up too high. I think the technology space has brought in a very high commoditization of shape and form. If you look at mobile phones, when they're switched off, they all look almost the same. And I think that's happening to a lot more devices. Most people are inspired by this whole minimalist view of what has happened in the electronic space. But if you actually look at what has made the digital space more exciting is localization of context and content. I think that should happen with product design as well. Otherwise, there's no space for. I think we need to fight out generalization now, and that's the biggest fear. I think the positive part that I see is there's a lot of shift towards small batch production, and people aren't. You don't need to. If you have a great idea, you can actually take it to market early, and consumers have now become a lot more experimental and acceptable of experimental ideas, and therefore it's a great time for design to flourish as entrepreneurs and not just service design, but be able to do something yourself as well. The ecosystem exists for designers to kind of build ideas, objects, take them to market. The consumer exists to experiment with what you have. So I think it's, you see that in the watch industry as well. I mean, there are a lot of Indian brands coming up other than Titan now. There's the Jaipur Watch Company, there's Bangalore Watch Company. There's a whole lot that is opening up, and people are realizing that this whole idea of localized context is an important part of our lives and from where we come. So I think that whole thought of geography, local context, culture, etc., I think there's a space for it to come back in a big way and fight this whole generalization that's happening with objects.
I mean, this is something that I also see and kind of worries me. On one hand, anything to do with tech is homogenizing pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And everything that has got to be culture informed and context informed is trying to kind of price out of it and say something loud, say a story loud, right? Like which is a tough place to be in. But considering we in India have got tons of the storytelling, I think it'll be great to do a culture and context informed pieces of work. Thanks, Tan. I'm just waiting for anybody else to join in and ask questions. Any questions from the audience? In the meantime, Mike, can you tell the audience how you're involved in DJAD, please?
Yeah. So I'm part of the governing council, and I've been helping DJ, rethink themselves as a space for design education, and as purely as an advisor. So I keep coming up with ideas and suggesting that for DJ, and I think that's something that is now kind of really seeing traction in terms of real change that is actually happening in terms of the way things are being implemented on ground as well. So that's my large involvement. I mean, I'm largely play an advisory role and help with making connects, advice on making changes, etc. That's the ongoing collaboration.
I think, thank you for your time. I think, okay, there is a question that is up right before we kind of close. That's good. Let me read it out. At the initial stage, while starting out your own firm, how did you manage to get the resources and implementation of your ideas, having a cost and probability for success as a constraint? Did you get that? Basically, without resources, how did you start off on some of the products?
So I think when I was at Titan, I kind of got a sense of how you require an ecosystem to come up with, to manifest ideas. So I had already started working with vendors, manufacturers, understanding what they could give to you. And when we started off, I was I think 3 or 4 people when we started off initially, and then moved to 15 in the next year. It's a question of how you scale up, and one good project leads to another. So you don't need to think of scale early, and especially if you're doing a consultancy space studio. It's about getting the right connections with people, and one project done well leads to another, and that's so I don't think resource was an issue because I didn't get into production of products early on. I got to develop ideas and then produce them for clients at their cost. So Cafe Coffee Day was one of the things, and I worked with Sandeep Costa on Cafe Coffee Day. We did about 1,000 cafes just after I left Titan, and I would then work with vendors to create these red cube lights, the signage, various other systems. But I was able to use the resources of the company that was paying me for design to kind of expose myself to more, and then that is what I used as leverage to build my own products. I did an exhibition of my own products, saved some money, and then just I think I'd won some award for the bicycle that you'd seen, and then I put that money into an exhibition and built a whole series of products and use that. So each one, it's a risk. I mean, all of this is a risk, but I think you need to just take those risks in a calculated manner, but take the risks. Otherwise, there's never a chance that you'll ever know that you'll evolve as a designer.
That was from Malavika Cheran, and of course Richard Mark, who's probably interning with you right now. He's got a question. What is usually expected? I will reword it. He's actually asked what is usually expected in a student portfolio, but I would say what is usually expected in the job seeker's portfolio in design, especially in industrial design today.
So I think when we see portfolios, we see one which is your individual skill, That's one part of it. Your problem solving, understanding of problem solving. Because I think a lot of projects are now collaborative, especially at college. So we are not able to splinter out who's done what in some of the projects, because a lot of the portfolios we see are more than one person working on it. So we try and evaluate your ability to solve problems. It doesn't matter if it was a great solution, but if you thought that through well and you kind of looked at the larger view of it, we see that as one skill is very important. I think going forward, this whole space of 3D modeling is important to have, because I think the future is in that space. Like, I encourage early thinking with your tools like a sketchbook, but you need to kind of literally leap off that and convert that. You can't rely on an engineer to convert your problems into a final product. You should be able to have that understanding. So if it's an industrial designer, a good understanding of processes, or at least the early understanding of processes. And I think this whole urge to be able to do things, I mean, the early years of your career, you really need to just work hard and, if you have an opportunity, that's half your job. So if we see that whole sense of excitement in a person, so portfolios might not just be enough. We have to speak to them. We sometimes do an internship. So that's how we kind of explore and see. I think it's attitude, skill, and ability to think. These are the three things that we kind of typically see. So it's not just portfolio. It's a mix of these.
I think Richard will start working harder from tomorrow on at the office. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Sitan. I think we are at the end of the hour almost, and I know you have to be elsewhere. So thanks a ton for your time, and we'll talk soon again.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for joining here. Thank you.